The Hornets take another L, this time to the Minnesota Timberwolves. A lot of interesting individual performances in this one. We'll break it all down today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We are available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. There's Doug Branson. He has everyhornetsboxscore.com up and running. He's got his text information up and running on the show notes. You can find his number, beep, boop, 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 beep, beep. Text him your depraved Hornets thoughts, and then you can also listen to him on Locked On NBA. He's also writing, God, I'm not done. He's also writing the newsletter. Yes, the Locked On Hornets daily newsletter. It's new.
You're not allowed to get tired by all of the work that I'm doing.
Doug, you have to do so much stuff. It's exhausting. Please, I got to take a nap after all the work you do. LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. The only thing I do is host a daily weekday show. That's about it. I don't have any other responsibilities. WFNZ, Wes, and Walker every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. All right, let's get into it here. Another loss, Doug, 125 to 110. Another 15-point loss. It's not a 30. It's not a 40-point loss. It's still double digits, still 15, still some pain, but some interesting individual performances to get to. So often we ask what the main storyline is, and then we'll put it in the bullet point section, and then we'll feel pretty good about it. I don't know what you would say is the number one storyline in this game, Doug. I'll go to you. I'll go to the producer that is in charge of all that stuff that made me tired. What would you say is the number one storyline for the Hornets?
Well, so on a game level, like, why did they lose this game? It was a tough start defensively, I thought, in the first quarter. Offensively, they actually had it going for once in the first quarter, but defensively, they could not keep up with all of the length and the athleticism that this version of the Minnesota Timberwolves, particularly without Rudy Gobert, and they were missing someone else as well. But essentially, they had to go small, a lot of Randall, a lot of McDaniels, because I think the Hornets defense decided, all right, we're going to put a little bit more pressure on Ant, we're going to put a little more pressure on Randall, and that left McDaniels to just really run wild both in the first quarter, and there was a big run in the third quarter, towards the end of the third quarter, that I thought really put the Hornets in a bind. But they fought, and they fought back in the fourth quarter, and they made Minnesota have to work for it. And that's why ultimately, like the Warriors' loss before this, to me, this was an ethical loss. Like, I think they had the potential to compete a little bit earlier in the game and maybe even make it a tighter game in the fourth quarter. Instead, they just made Minnesota sweat a little bit. So we can talk about some of the reasons why, they found themselves in that position in the fourth quarter. But I thought, just from a game standpoint, they fought throughout the game, and that's about all you can ask this particular version of the Hornets. And then one final thing, and I think we could talk more about this, is Miles Bridges. Because this has been a down season. This has been a season where we've put the microscope on LaMelo Ball. We put the microscope on Mark Williams. And I think we haven't probably paid enough attention to just the level of consistency and improvement that Miles Bridges has made and his impact on the game just night in and night out. He's been both available, but also he's just been, I've called him Daddy Buckets a few times in the Every Hornets box score write-up, because he's just been the guy consistently, like when everything falls apart, he just takes the basketball and says, all right, get out of the way. I'm just going to mow through Julius Randle and go get a bucket for this team. And honestly, in a season where there has been a lot of down, I commend Miles Bridges for keeping that level of play up consistently.
Especially as the season goes on. So checkout time is about post All-Star break. Going into the All-Star break, it's not like they were playing good basketball. You have this trade debacle with Mark Williams going on. You don't even know what your team is going to look like. There are people just floating into the ether of NBA basketball. They are the 2K players without a face. We don't know what jersey they're going to put on. And yet they get back after the All-Star break. Now they have something to play for with Mark Williams afterwards, right? You get that win. Miles Bridges knocks down a clutch three. Everything revolved around LaMelo in that possession, but you get the idea. Like, Miles knocks down the clutch three and then continues to put together some winning plays, or attempts the winning plays, trying to do the right thing, right? Not settling for any of the shots, continuing to get downhill and score, even if he's not shooting the three ball all that well. And not in this game. He's had some moments, especially post All-Star break, where he's been hitting from distance, but still, that's not his forte. He's a guy that gets to the rack and scores a lot better in that regard. And you're right. It's someone that doesn't feel like he's ever checked out of a game. Well, where a lot of other people will check out because the season is just too hard, Doug. They're losing too much. I'm not even blaming everyone for it so much, because they've been doing this for a few seasons now. It's harder to give them the excuse, though, when you have Miles, who's been dealing with this for quite some time also, and Miles is still not checked out. And I absolutely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, he's not checked out. He's engaged, but he's also not pressing, because I think there's a tendency, particularly when you're a player that signs a contract. When Miles signed the contract with the Hornets, we have to remember back to those negotiations. They were tough negotiations, and they ultimately ended with a contract that was descending in value and was shorter on years than I'm sure that Miles wanted. And I'm sure the total dollar amount wasn't what Miles wanted. And I think when you're in that situation, particularly as you get into the middle of that contract, there's a tendency for certain players to press, to showcase, to say, all right, I'm going to get mine, so that other teams can notice that and can look at the numbers and be confident in that. And I can get to a location that I would actually like to play in, to a contender. And I don't think Miles has done that. Like, he's not, to me, he doesn't play outside of the game. He's willing to get others involved. I think he was a tone setter. And again, not many tone setters on this team. Not many guys that are going to start the game. He had a rapid sunk, got 5 quick points, but tone setting and like, I'm going to be physical, I'm going to go downhill, I'm going to attack this Minnesota defense that sort of oscillates between I'm going to give you everything at the rim and I'm going to press you up top. He noticed that and was like, all right, if I can just get by this first layer of defense, I'm money. And he was. And so again, I respect that. What Miles has done on the floor this season has been not even respectable. It's been commendable. And, I think he's going to continue to do that throughout the rest of the season. He makes Hornets basketball watchable when he plays like this. And anybody should be commended for that.
Has Rapid A Song transitioned in meeting from Teo Maledon to a quick 5 points?
Yeah, well, yeah, because, Teo Maledon started the Rapid A Song, because he would check in for those, the uninitiated, the more recent sickos. Teo Maledon was a two-way player, guard. They got a lot of playing time when one of LaMelo's many ankle injuries. And he would insert himself into the game and just immediately score 5 points. And it was amazing. And so I called it Rapid A Song. Okay. And yeah, Musa, the new Rapid A Song guy is Musa. And he's also French.
I thought Musa was good in this game.
But yeah, Musa will check in and hit a Rapid A Song. But it's not, well, it would typically be an and one and then 2 points. Yeah, Rapid A Song.
Yeah, there you go. Last thing on Miles, I will say about Miles too, man. Look, I wonder how much Miles doesn't take any game for granted after missing 92 games because of his own doing, because of what happened God almighty, 2.5 years ago? It's ridiculous how long ago that was now. But you miss a lot of games, you come back, you're a little rusty, you do take a lot of responsibility because of all the injuries last year, where it does feel like Miles is doing a lot of what he normally wouldn't be asked to do because of the injuries, and because of that he's pressing, and that's not even an indictment on him pressing. That's not any problem. It's just kind of, hey, we got to figure this stuff out. We have a bunch of injuries. Who else are we going to turn to? So now I think he's still playing within his game, and he's playing hard every single night. This guy was deprived of basketball again because of his own doing.
Deprived himself. Yeah,
that's right. So he didn't play for a long time. He's talked about it. He's talked about controlling what you can control. He's talked about just wanting to go out there and hoop again. And that's what he's doing right now. That's what he's doing right now. So Miles Bridges.
He's kept his composure. I would say, the Hornets have not been any kind of substantial basketball. The last time they were, in fact, he got ejected at the end of the game and tossed something into the stands. So I wonder, if he's a member of the Charlotte Hornets, when they get back to playing substantial basketball, will it be different? I think that's a worthy question to ask. I don't know the answer to that. but it would be interesting to see. The final thing that I would say is that he's also holding his teammates accountable, and maybe this is a segue into the next thing we talk about, but there was a moment that I liked towards the end of the game when they were moving in the fourth quarter, and Mark Williams, they were battling for a rebound with Julius Randle, and Miles gets it and then has it ripped away by Randle. But Mark Williams was nowhere to be found, not hitting anyone. He should have picked up Randle in that scramble for the ball. And Miles, I don't know what he yelled at Mark. All I know is that he yelled at Mark because you could hear it ring out through the Spectrum Center screaming at Mark. I imagine it was something like, Mark, wake the bleep up, or something in the Clifford vein to Nick Richards, like set a bleeping screen, except this was just put your body on another body in a Minnesota Timberwolves jersey, please and thank you.
Okay, let's do it. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
At least that's what I would have screamed.
Bees everywhere!
I did scream it. I did scream it at my television, in fact.
Can you imagine an NBA player listening to Doug Branson walk up to him and say, "Will you get a rebound, please, and thank you"?
I think it would be so. I think it would be so unlike what they normally hear. I think it would actually be effective.
Doug yells at Mark. Coming up next, LOH. That would be great. Please and thank you. Play some defense, Mark Williams. All right, this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Who's in your support system? We all need people to lean on, whether it's friends, family, mentors, professionals. Even the strongest leaders and athletes know that asking for help makes them better. Therapy is one of the best ways to build a strong support system. It's not just for tough times. It helps with setting boundaries, developing coping skills, and becoming the best version of yourself. Learning to ask for help can be tough, but I've seen firsthand how valuable it is to have a support system that keeps you grounded and motivated. You get everyday benefits with BetterHelp. Therapy isn't just about crisis moments. It's a tool for self-improvement, stress management, and navigating life's challenges. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. It was nice to see the tide turn a little bit for Mark Williams the last 3 games. If you go through his game log, he'd been putting together some nice box scores. And it's not even that they were all that crazy every single game, right? Against Dallas, he goes for 26 and 16. He goes 10 of 18 from the field. That's more like it. Then you have your fun 78% from the field game. Remember when Mark had that crazy consecutive made field goal streak? He was shooting at a ridiculous percentage, even for a center. He has the 24-point game against Washington, 11 of 14 against the Wizards, 12 rebounds. They're all L's. They're losing all these games, but we were trying to find the bright side for Mark. That it had been a mostly down season for him. 12 points against Golden State. I thought it was a fine game there. You and I both talked about it. Kind of up and down. 13 boards, 5 of 8 from the field. And then this game happens, Doug. 5 of 7 from the field. He scores 12 points, but doesn't reach double-digit rebounds for the first time in the last 4 games, missed a couple of free throws, and has gone 2 of 4 each of the last 2 contests. I'll let you yell at Mark a little bit more. Why were you so upset with the way that Mark Williams played against Minnesota?
Well, so this is a game after the game in which pregame against the Warriors, you had Coach Charles Lee asking for Mark Williams to show more consistency, not in points scored, just more consistency in going to get a rebound, being physical. And then he follows up that Warriors game with this absolute stinker against the Timberwolves. And well, if you want to look at the box score, look at the first half where he scored 0 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, last in game score for the first half. And he was bobbling basketballs. I called him Bismarck because he looked like Bismack Biyombo out there. Couldn't hold on to a basketball. And these were good passes. You know, we excused his former game because the passes weren't very good coming from Nick Smith Jr. He was getting good passes in this game. And look, this was going to be a tough game for the center position that the Hornets have against, again, a team that was playing smaller on purpose, and they have a lot of athletes and they have a lot of guys that can shoot, and so they're going to extend the floor. This wasn't a great game for Nurkic either.
It was not.
So the only center that really played well was Moussa Diabate because, again, he's not a center. He was more equipped to play against what Minnesota was offering. But Mark Williams had an apocalyptic game in terms of the things that you want to see more from Mark Williams, which is physicality. In the first segment, I mentioned the rebound that he wasn't involved in, but there were just so many moments where he was just taking himself out of the game. And I'll point to one that I thought was especially egregious, and it was in the third quarter. It was part of this. I think it was like a 14 or 17 plus run for the Minnesota Timberwolves that really, in all effect, put the game out of reach for the Charlotte Hornets. And Mark Williams goes to double Julius Randle. And I don't know if that was the plan or not, but every time, 2 straight possessions, he went to double Julius Randle and left Jaden McDaniels, who had been scorching the Hornets up to that point, left him all alone in the corner and went to double Julius Randle. I don't know if that was the plan, but it sure didn't seem like anyone else on the team knew why he was going to double Randle. And then his double wasn't aggressive enough to affect what Julius Randle wanted to do at all. So Julius Randle found Jaden McDaniels free under the basket for an easy layup and then found him in the corner for a 3. It was a 5-point swing that was part of a 17-point or a 17-plus run for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And after the McDaniels 3, he got taken out of the game. And that to me signals that he was tired of guarding anyone at the 3-point line anymore, and he was just going to try this little double team on Randle, and it was so completely ineffective that Charles Lee had to remove him from the floor. It was just, all I'm asking from Mark Williams is to raise the floor a little bit, to not have these apocalyptically bad games where you become unplayable. That's all. I'm not asking for him to score 25 and 15 every single night, or even a double-double every single night. Double-digit rebounds, great, but I'm just asking for you not to be apocalyptic on the floor, and that's what happened in this game.
I don't think he was good. I do not think he was good. Me and you have much more been on the same page with Mark Williams lately. Like, apocalyptic, there were some things for me where I thought it was more roller coastery in some of these possessions where he did challenge at the rim on a couple times. There was a drive where he absorbed a body and missed a couple of shots and forced a couple of missed shots at the rim. I think he ran on offense a couple of times where he was awarded a free dunk, which, again, you're right to be frustrated because it doesn't happen all the time. And like, I'm totally with you on that.
Real quick, it also happened in the fourth quarter after he had, honestly, it's difficult in any game to point to one particular player and say that's why they're down double digits. In this one, to me, it was easy. Like, it was Mark Williams. And then in the fourth quarter, and we've seen this a couple of times this season, that he has the audacity to play 3 quarters of terrible basketball and then suddenly wake up in the fourth quarter. Too late.
Yeah,
it's too late.
So, right. It's the fourth quarter that I'm thinking of a couple of these plays, and you're not wrong about any of this, because it should not take away any of the frustration. It's to me, I'm even more frustrated, to your point, I guess, right? We agree and we're talking about different things, but it is more frustrating. You're totally right in the sense that, okay, he absorbs a body on a drive. He affects shots at the rim. He was trying down low. It looked like there were some times where he actually did affect some shots. And then on offense, when he did run the floor in some crazy helter-skelter type of fast break possession, he's a guy that's wide open next to the rim and then receives a couple of dunks because of it, because he got down the floor in time. And that's not happening every single time, which again goes to the frustration. I'm with you though, Doug. If you want to talk about the best center in this game, whether you want to say he's not a center or not, and I get it, right? It's if Doug could rename Moussa Diabate, it would be Moussa not a center Diabate every single time we talk about him on this pod. But he was the best big. We'll just call him a big because that's what he is, right? He makes winning plays. I don't know how much we disagree about Moussa, but I understand that you need more size. I get it. The dude is just mobile as hell. He tries every single possession. There were 2 plays that can't show up on the box score. Even if he gets the rebound, I don't know how it's as effective a play as if he just grabbed the rebound, where he fights over a guy that's boxing him out. He's just jumping all over him. There's no over the back call, which, maybe could have gone that way if the ball bounces that direction. But because he's fighting for it, Anthony Edwards has to come in and try to grab it, but is trying to grab a basketball that Moose is fighting for too. Anthony can't get his hands on it because of it. It would otherwise be an easy rebound. Ball goes out of bounds. It's off on Anthony Edwards, and the ball sticks around with Charlotte. That only happened because Musa had more want to than everybody else on that possession. The other possessions are Musa crashing down from the three-point line and actually grabbing some of these offensive rebounds. I think that's why you see the defensive numbers better when he's on the floor. You see the offensive numbers pretty crazy if you look at cleaning the glass with some 99 percentile stuff from him. Musa is a guy that has earned every single freaking penny of this multi-year contract, and you want younger dudes, Doug. You talked about this yesterday, I think. Younger guys should be seizing this opportunity with all the injuries that have been had on this Hornets team. Man, Musa took that thing and ran with it and is doing everything that he possibly can. He's the best big for the Hornets, and a lot of the numbers would suggest that he's been the best big for a lot of this season.
Yeah, well, and so to me, and this may be where we disagree. I think we agree that he's been the best big for the Hornets. I think that has more to do with the Hornets than it does with Moussa Diabate. I don't think we disagree on who Moussa is and what he gives your team. I don't even think we disagree about like where his place in a rotation would be if the Hornets had a competitive big rotation. I mean, I think he would be an energy guy, a tool belt guy that you bring off the bench, but it's a like 10 to 12th man, not this guy is a solid member of your rotation, not without a jump shot. Like if he develops any kind of jump shot or any kind of offensive versatility in the offseason, I'll completely flip the script on that take. But it's going to be difficult to play him in those situations. The Hornets have a problem at the center position, and that problem is that each of these guys possess like one or two great things, but the deficiencies that they have, they don't have the right match. Because look, every guy is going to have strengths and weaknesses, and certain guys that balances out. And I don't think the balance is quite right on any of these guys. Like Mark is tall, can't shoot, and isn't physical. And then you have Musa, who's like super physical, but not tall and can't shoot. Like if one of those knots for either of those guys turns into a yes, then you have a player that you can count on consistently in your rotation. But unfortunately, that's what they have, and that's what they have to address either in the offseason. Those players individually have to address it, or the Hornets have to continue to evolve that position.
I'm looking at cleaning the glass for Moussa Diabate. He's listed at 6'11". Come on now. You're ruining the rep, baby. Like, I want to go to your website. I can't. He is not. How tall do you think he is? I mean, if he's listed at 6'11" on cleaning the glass, I don't know where he's listed elsewhere.
In platform shoes, maybe. That's like Kemba Walker was always.
No.
Kemba Walker was always listed at like 6'1", and I was like, I'm 5'10", 5'11". I've stood in the locker room with him. That guy was not 6'1".
Wait, yeah, because Mark. Then I go to ESPN, and Mark is listed at 7 feet. So if you were to take these two, you're saying that Mark is just 1 inch taller than Moussa Diabate. Okay, Moussa on ESPN is 6'9". That's more like it.
Yeah,
That's more like it. Oh, come on, cleaning the glass. Got to get the height right. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
We'll give you some rapid assault observations in the last segment of Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Drive the ship for us, Doug Branson. Where do you want to go next?
Well, I want to go to LaMelo. I have lots of thoughts about LaMelo Ball, but I want to save it for tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I think we need to dive into some of his trend lines for the season. I was doing that on the Every Hornets box score chat on Cleaning the Glass. They do 10-game rolling averages, and I think there are some interesting trend lines for him.
Yeah.
And I thought his defensive game in this one, yeah, we'll say interesting too. I'll just leave it for tomorrow.
Just a quick thought. I noticed that as well. There's a lot of built up frustration from LaMelo. There's a lot of looking at the ref and standing there for 2 seconds. Just look, if he doesn't get a foul call, he's been asking for a lot more. He's not getting them. I do think there's been some particularly egregious no calls on him. It's happening.
Sure.
It's always been an issue. It's been worse seemingly the last 2 weeks, in my opinion, than it's ever been. I think Draymond Green is holding LaMelo's jersey in that game against Golden State, and nobody's doing anything about it. And I looked at Charles Lee for a moment, Doug. Like, Charles was mad, yelled
Somebody
at the
get
ref.
thrown out of a game. Somebody needs to get thrown out of either try. We saw Steve Clifford do that a few times. Steve Clifford went to bat for Kemba Walker during Kemba Walker's ascension. I remember distinctly Clifford getting tossed from a game because he was sick and tired of Kemba Walker getting tossed around and not getting the respect.
You know who got a tech in that game because he was tired of seeing a no call that would have benefited his team? Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr did it with these travel calls, and then after the game, he's like, we got to start calling travels in the NBA. Dog, Draymond Green grabbed LaMelo's jersey and got away with it. I need you to not talk. I love you, Steve. I think you're amazing. I need you to not talk in this one. But Charles animated on the sideline in that 3-second stretch. Cool. I need something to happen, man. I need LaMelo to get to the foul line because of what you do. And look, they challenged one of the no calls. Clear foul against whoever it was that did foul LaMelo. And then what you saw was LaMelo go to the foul line, knock down a couple free throws. Okay, great. Anyways, that's for tomorrow. LaMelo is also getting so frustrated to where like he's standing and looking at the ref for 2 seconds while the play goes on. That also needs to change. So it's kind of a mess right now. It's a mess.
I'll say that Charles Lee after this game, he looked tired. You know the images that we get of the president of the United States when they first get elected, and then after like 4 years, and then after 8 years, and they look like they've aged significantly. More than 4 years or more than 8 years, and it's because of the stress of that job.
Yeah.
And it, like, Charles Lee, he has a little silver streak in his hair, and I've just watched it. If I could I should do like a cut from each post-game press conference and just watch that gray streak get a little wider and get a little longer, because he looks tired, man. And all the positivity and all of the energy that we saw from Charles Lee has been sucked out of him. And I imagine Charles Lee walking down the hall and going down the elevator into the dungeon where they keep Steve Clifford, who, watching, EuroLeague film. And he just opens Steve Clifford's door and just stares at him. No smile, just stares straight at him. And Clifford looks back at his computer screen, looks back at Charles Lee, like, this is kind of awkward. Why is he just standing here staring at me? And Steve Clifford just gives a smile and a shrug. Like, so I stopped doing this. I couldn't take it anymore.
The little hair that I had left in that cul-de-sac, gone as soon as I started coaching the Bobcats. Doug, you know how I know that it's going to get grayer and longer, that streak in the hair you're talking about? Uh-huh. Go do the James Borrego age picture thing. Go do that. It's wild.
He was winning.
I'm not even kidding.
Games.
I'm not even kidding. Go back and look at James Borrego's introductory press conference, and then go see what he looked like at the very end of his tenure. That is not. There's comedy in it. It is not a joke. There's reality can be comedy, and watching James Borrego look 15 years older than the 5 years that he actually aged. 20 years older than the 5 years he actually aged. Yeah, it's a real thing. We'll talk about LaMelo. We'll talk about Charles Lee maybe tomorrow. One other observation from this game: Minnesota got a lot of talent, man. This is a team that doesn't have Karl Anthony Towns anymore. It clearly not working out for Minnesota with everything that's happened with Julius Randle. Julius Randle still is a guy that has 2 All-NBA selections on his basketball reference page. you have Julius Randle, Jade McDaniels. They both go for 25 or more. Naz Reid was awesome and scored 13 points, but was also a plus 20. I know you can't do the plus minus thing. It just felt like Naz Reid maybe wasn't hitting as many shots, but Naz just taking dudes off the dribble, 10 rebounds. Naz Reid's game is fantastic. And then Anthony Edwards going for 29. Like, is it fair to say last night, okay, because LaMelo is up here just on a general basis, but last night, did Minnesota have the 4 best players on the floor? Does Miles get to 4? I don't know, because Nas is damn good.
No. We're not going to do that. Miles definitely is.
Okay.
I would say 4th. And honestly, he didn't demand a double team like Julius Randle did, but I thought he got a few on Julius Randle that Julius didn't necessarily get on Miles. So I put them 3 and 3A.
Okay, fair enough.
They went back and forth.
That's fair. I would say Naz Reid is also somebody that maybe last night didn't get it, but he's going to get a big contract, man. He's going to he's going to get a monster contract.
I think Minnesota gives it to him. I wish that Charlotte would open the checkbook and find a way. Like, that's a guy that I'm fully prepared to overpay for. Like, here's the thing about the Minnesota Timberwolves. Again, no Rudy Gobert, but every single player hit a 3-point shot. Like, they just unleashed Jalen Clark on LaMelo Ball. They just had a bulldog. They were like, all right, go, just release him. Shoot him full of. It was like like on the Bulls. They shoot him full of whatever, and to get him mad. Like, they just have guys off the bench that you've never heard of before. Jalen Clark just coming in and dominating defensively and getting all kinds of deflections. How many? They didn't have any turnovers. They like 2, 3, 4. They ended this game with 4 turnovers. I'm seeing 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5. I got it. 5 turnovers, and that's some on their protection, but it's also like the Hornets they're not deflecting basketballs. They're just not getting into passing lanes. They're not doing anything about it. And they shot a lot. I think that was a factor too. But yeah, every single player hit a 3-point shot. Like, that's so far from where the Hornets are in terms of their roster construction. Minnesota has so many fun players that are not elite players, not go-to players, but just come off the bench and do cool things. The Hornets right now healthy. Do they even have one? Probably not. Like Trey Mann. Like, they've got to find more fun guys like that. And I think, to Peterson and Lee's credit, they're looking for those players. Like, Moussa Diabate is part of that. Damian Baugh has been somewhat fun, but they're still looking for those players, but they just haven't found them consistently.
Yeah, Kogi, like the Hornets DNA type. You can see them go after those types of players. And you're probably right. I probably got my Miles and Naz Reid overall overlapped with in-game, who was the best player. I think you're right about that after looking at it more. Other observations just real quickly in this one. LaMelo fouled out in this game. That was the first time he fouled out since November 21st. But just remember, that was a real issue at the beginning of the season where he kept fouling out and he kept getting in foul trouble. He has not gotten in a lot of foul trouble and then fouls out for the first time again since November 21st. First time it happened since then. So LaMelo, that's you got something on LaMelo?
Well, just 4 of those were in the fourth quarter. This was a little bit different than the situations where he would get 3 fouls in the first and take himself out of the game. Like, he was able to play his regular rotation minutes 1 through 3. And then the fourth, the final foul was essentially, I don't know why he just doesn't ask to get out of the game. It's so funny to me. Like, LaMelo has the pull. He's got the contract. He could just look over at Charles Lee and be like, I'm good. Can I go now? Like, we're not going to win this game. Can I go now? Instead, he just intentionally fouls. It's so odd to me.
We got to talk about Seth Curry just coming in and
soaking wet.
So Eric Collins, after he goes 3 of 3, okay? Seth Curry, bang, 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 3 for 3 from distance. Eric Collins, and I forget who he gave credit to, so I apologize, but he gave credit to one of his stat guys, and they had done the numbers, and Seth Curry at that time became the NBA's league leader in 3-point shooting percentage currently, okay? He passed Luke Kennard, which I started doing some digging on Basketball Reference, not like I didn't know what the shooting prowess was already for the family, but Del Curry's over 40% for his career. Steph Curry is the best shooter of all time, and Seth Curry, statistically, is the best shooter in the NBA right now. I tweeted this out, but I know that Dell didn't even let the old family dog eat dinner if he didn't knock down 500 threes in the driveway first.
Yeah.
Why is Del Curry not the shooting coach? Bruce Kreitzer, amazing. Whoever else you want to get to, that's fine. You see those two Currys playing in the NBA that are the best shooters of all time? That Del Curry is the best, along with Muggsy, and I think I'd put Del Curry 1A, is the best Hornets ambassador of the franchise. Like, he is number one ambassador. Muggsy Bogues is number two. Should we just have him coach and have him be the shooting coach as well? Because he's 2 for 2 on not like elite shooters, Hall of Fame level in that particular skill set shooters, and the best shooter of all time. Just throwing it out there. Go ahead and ponder it, Schlotkin, if you will.
I would be shocked if he hasn't been asked to do that multiple times. But here's the problem. He's probably making more money on the broadcast team. It's probably less work. If we're being honest, it would be less gruesome, and he probably gets to see his grandkids more. Like, I mean, I think that's what it all comes down to. You gotta want it. You gotta want that life.
I do. I would love to know how many times he's been asked, because if it's not once, I don't want to make this a bigger thing. At 2,
and I'm probably taking the over.
Yeah. You have to be right. You have to be. If you find out that nobody ever thought to ask Del Curry to be the shooting coach, because it's not even, hey, he's the best shooter along with Glenn Rice in our franchise's history. Maybe that translates to coaching. We've seen him breed coaches or other good shooters before. So why can't we just have that? Plus, Del, he's going to take away from his golf time, man. Del's got the life. He's got two. He coached 2 players. He's 2 for 2 on elite shooters. He gets to golf. He gets to have fun. He gets to be a part of the best broadcast duo in the NBA. You're totally right.
No, he gets to have an off season. So when you're, I don't think you get much time when you're an assistant coach. You just got to get right back to it, watch tape, figure stuff out, get ready for guys to report back. No, when you're on the broadcast team, you get some off season. And by the way, total respect for that guy. Like, I mean, you got 100%. If you don't, you have to recognize about yourself. Like, if you want that life, great, go get it. If you don't want that life, too many people say yes to opportunities that they aren't in their heart really ready for. And again, I don't know if he's actually ever been asked, but I would be shocked if the organization, because you have to, I mean, he's been through many coaching regimes. Like, I'm sure every single one of those regimes was like, hey, should we kick the tires again on Del Curry joining the staff?
Well, and Bruce Kreitzer is legendary, so that's not even to say anything about him. I don't even know how serious of a take this is. It feels serious, though, watching Seth Curry hit that crazy shot at the buzzer. I mean, God, just the floating in midair, the bike pedaling in midair to throw that up from the free throw line. Awesome stuff.
Insane.
That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. That includes YouTube. Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com, the subtext info on the show notes, and listen to him on Locked On NBA every weekday with Matt Moore and Hayes. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me every weekday on WFNZ with Wes and Walker, 12 to 3 p.m., Sports Radio 92.7 FM. That'll do it. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Drinks are free for Seth Curry at the Low Bar.